Yeah, hi there. And these comments are for one of my students in my English 104 class. Let me take a look just briefly here. Let me go back to a faculty center here and make sure. I'm going to use your ID number, or part of it. Okay, here we go. Give me a quick second here. Okay, so the last four digits of your name here, 3372, I got it. Okay, so overall you're stuck in the same place. You got 74 on this one, and I graded this without even looking at your previous grade on your previous assignment. So the question before us is this: what could you do, if anything, that can move this paper into the B, maybe even the A category, and keep these things in mind for the final paper, which is a 30-point paper? Okay, so when I'm looking at the rubric, you have a thesis. You had problems framing the thesis, some language use issues, but you definitely had the thesis. That's good. But the introduction is not as developed as it could be, so I took 2 points off for the introduction part of the grading. And you say, what is a fad? Some might compare a fad with a trend, which are things that grab people's attention and spread until everybody is doing them, and eventually they will slowly fade away. In the story, the city writes a story of how fads come and go, and then in this paper, I will be blah, blah, blah. Then you state your thesis. Now, here's one that introduced the topic in a little bit more depth, not too much more, but a little bit more. This writer says, throughout time, many things come in style or become cool. However, these things do not last long, and most of the time, they're replaced by something else. Although it happens all the time, some people do not know why it happens and how it happens. John Backdurf, aka Durf, is a famous cartoonist who made a comic strip explaining a theory about how things become popular and when they become popular. And then he explains his thesis, so he develops the topic a little bit more than what you did there. So that's the first thing, is you can make some improvements with the introduction. Now, the next part is the second part of the essay, where I think you lost some more points. You probably lost a total of about 3 points out of 50 just in part 2. So you say peer pressure, which I like, right? So you talk about Madonna, the interview. Notice how you bring up a lot of information that comes from other areas, but you're not really using any in-text citations. So you should document the interview. That should be part of your works cited section. So if you can use the YouTube video, the one I posted at Blackboard, you can use that as your citation, but you need citations within the paragraph, and then they need to cross-reference to your works cited section at the end. That's something that you have avoided. Right, so I like the peer pressure thing, but when you move to the next paragraph, you say another message that Durf is giving his audience is how fads come and go. No, you don't bring up a new topic. You focus around peer pressure. That's the key, because that's showing me in the 2 paragraphs, you can take the idea of peer pressure, you can develop it by talking about the Madonna interview, and you didn't mention this, but David Letterman asked Madonna in the interview, he said, well, were you peer pressured into getting that thing on your nose? And she goes, no, I don't succumb to peer pressure. I find that very interesting, that she uses exactly what you're trying to interpret. She uses exactly those words in the interview. You didn't really point that out, but that's definitely something you could have pointed out to help support what you're saying. So that second paragraph needs to continue on the same vein of peer pressure. So that was kind of a weak thing to move on to a new topic there. That wasn't a good idea on your part, especially with a short paper. Remember, with a shorter paper, you're trying to show me that you can take a topic and then you can develop it in multiple paragraphs, right? You don't just develop it in one paragraph, then move on to a new point. You continue on with that idea. That shows depth and complexity of thought. In the final part, I think in the final area, you're talking about the belly button piercing thing, which I think is appropriate, but you could probably make more comparisons of how this fad that you followed, how does this relate back to Durst's ideas? So you did make the connections, but you could have made more of those kinds of connections. You see what we're saying? So overall, when I graded the paper, you had some problems with MLA formatting documentation because you're not using the in-text citations to document the sources that you're using. So you need to improve on that, a little bit better introduction, and I think it would at least move your paper to a B category. But the other area, there are some polishing issues throughout the paper that you have to be careful about. Problems with punctuation, problems with typos. For example, you say, in a week, at least I stated to see people on Facebook. You mean to say started. Use a lot of me and my friends. You'll say, me and my friends adopted, but think about it like this. You want to use, in that case, a subject, not object pronoun. Well, why is that? Think about it. So if you go to page 3, you say, me and my friends adopted, right? Would you say here, me adopted in freshman year? Or would you say, I adopted it in freshman year? You would say I, right? So that you say a fad that my friends and I adopted in freshman year was started by the seniors who thought they were skinny, so they would tie their shirts so others could see their belly buttons and so on. So be careful about your word choice and generally polishing the essay. So for you, I would strongly advise, at least until you begin your graduate program, when you get your master's degree, you're probably pretty good on your own, but for the next few years, I would continue to rely on writing center tutors to help you polish up and clean up your writing. I think that would be beneficial for you. All right, so thank you for doing this particular writing project. I look forward to reading your next paper. And remember, don't be a stranger. Come by my office. Let's take a look at your papers. I will help you with them. All right?